So Hayden, welcome again to the UK. You've now been on UK soil for 2 months. What are your impressions?
It's certainly a little bit different to Australia. It's a little bit more together and close. Everyone's a little bit more community focused, I would say. We're very spaced out in Australia. I think there's a lot of land and gaps. So it's been interesting to be so close to so many other people all the time. Working here has been fantastic. The team's got a great culture and everyone works together very well. Working in a bigger firm's been a little bit different as well, but it's good to see that it's so respected in the community as well. Taking out the Business of the Year at the Gatwick Diamond Business Awards, so that's very interesting, and seeing how excited and ecstatic everyone was to be sort of a part of that. Is brilliant as well, because we've won a few awards back home as well, so I can kind of empathise with how entertaining it is to win such a fantastic award like that.
Brilliant, and of course winning awards means cake, so it can't get much better, really.
Yeah, there is nothing quite like a cake in the middle of the day to split up your day, so it's fantastic.
Fabulous. I'm very interested to know. I mean, we're sitting here in the office on the south coast of England. I've always thought business is business. Have you seen any real differences between attitudes and behaviours in the UK as opposed to back home in Melbourne, Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I think that England and the United Kingdom is very, it's been around for a very long time, and Australia in comparison has been around for very little time. So, obviously in the last sort of 10 and 15 years, we've seen a massive development in technology globally, and really the impact that has had. I think that Australia being so far away, we're very distant almost to a lot of what goes on in sort of mainland, I suppose you would say. But the sort of attitudes, I think that I was expecting it to be very, very similar, and just, drop the Aussie accent and have just, lots of English people around. But in reality, I think that Australians a little bit more, have a higher expectation, a little bit more forward coming to a degree. I think that we're a little bit more, we have set higher expectations, and we're very, not shy to let everyone else know about that. So, often I'll have to not even refrain myself, but just realise that everyone's a little bit more relaxed to a degree, which is ironic considering the, expert or interpretation that everyone has of Australia, that we're a bit sort of relaxed and drink beer every day. So it's a bit different, I think, to what I was expecting personally. But it's honestly, it's good. I think that it's interesting to work in an environment where not everyone is everyone's the same, and what I'm used to. So
sure.
Yeah.
And from your point of view, then, I mean, you've only been here 2 months, but you've had a fairly, I would imagine you've had a fairly close contact with a number of clients already. Yes. Would you say that kind of almost new world attitude in Australia means that Australian businesses are more open to change and do it more quickly?
I think that we're more open to change. I think we've had better access to technologies that allow us to change, obviously with the development of Xero coming out of New Zealand and predominantly rising in popularity in Australia. It's very easy, and we've had it sort of for a few years now, where it's almost the standard. So we're sort of coming out of this change cycle, whereas the UK is very much sort of in the midst of that. So it's interesting to see the uptake. I think that the issues that we were seeing a few years ago are definitely the same ones that you guys are seeing now. So it's interesting to a point to see that Australia is sort of coming out of this, but the UK is in the middle of it. But most of these sort of problems, I would say, or pain points, are generally the same as what we've experienced at home. Okay. But yeah, you're certainly sort of in the middle of it at the moment, and you can see the divide between, some clients are really proactive and they want to move on and adapt. A few are still sort of hesitating, and to say the least, Australia's very much been in that hesitation stage, and there are still a few businesses that are set in stone, so to speak.
Yeah.
But there is that sort of that difference to a degree.
And I guess there always will be. So just getting a little bit more technical, the UK is facing a very different tax regime through making tax digital.
Yes.
Is that something that's already happened in Australia?
Funnily enough, no. So that was a very interesting aspect when I came here. I was like, what's this whole making tax digital aspect? And we are getting to a point where our individual tax returns are going to be lodged automatically. So the Australian Tax Office is going to automatically process and lodge that based on information. But business tax returns, it's just not a thing that's going to happen in the near future, as far as I'm aware anyway. But it would be interesting to see Australia sort of almost copy the UK on that, because I think that it's a fantastic idea. And I think that it's really going to sort of drive a boot in sort of the backside of lots of businesses, and they're going to say, well, we're going to have to go into a system now to log this and make sure we're compliant. So that, I think, is realistically going to speed up the adoption of technology and change, and it's a good well, I'm going to say feature, but you know what I mean. It's a good sort of scheme or process, I think, that'll automate.
And an inevitable one, presumably.
Yes, I think that waiting to the end of the year is okay to a degree, but we're getting to a point now where everyone wants things quick.
Yeah.
Even if that's government, they want things immediately rather than sort of once a year or however often it'll come around. Yes, it's interesting to see, to say the least.
Sure. And we've just spoken briefly about the government. Obviously, you've arrived in the midst of what we call Brexit.
Yeah.
So the UK is about to divorce Europe. Rightly or wrongly, we don't need to go into whether that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. It's going to happen. First of all, I'd be really interested to understand what your perception from Australia was before you arrived about Brexit. Did you have any real kind of understanding of what it would mean?
Well, to a degree, I knew that when there were sort of talks about it originally, and sort of, the vote was going to take place, and there was much of the heaps of campaigning about it, and we'd get sort of the occasional small piece of news, and it would be, this is happening, and obviously globalization were able to look into it to a degree. I think that it was interesting and a surprise to me that the UK was going to leave the European nation. I just didn't think that it was particularly necessary from my point of view, obviously, but it was a shock, and then followed by another big shock with the Trump election. So there's a lot going on in world politics at the time. Despite being so far away, I think that Australia is sort of impacted by these changes, especially with how globalized the nation is, so globalized the world is realistically. We import a lot, we export a lot. We're going to be inevitably impacted by these sort of arrangements. So it was disappointing to a point, and I think that it's going to be a lot of requirements for the UK now to sort of step up, and force itself to work with everyone else, to a point where the European nation is sort of well established and formed. So there's going to be a decent amount of not catching up to do, I want to say, but really sort of establishing its place again amongst the sort of globalized world.
I think it's a really well considered view. This idea that there is some catching up to do now. The UK has to start developing relationships one-to-one with places like Australia. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, for us to see how that does pan out over the next 2-3 years.
Definitely.
Hayden, it's been great talking to you. Maybe
Likewise.
we can do another catch-up in another couple of months.
Yes.
Enjoy your time.
Well, thank you very much.